We are back, and spring is starting to hit Michigan just in time for the next MGRS race, the Waterloo Grit Gravel. Now, I did take part in the short course version of this race last year, and I made an entire video on the event. However, when I got done with it, I just wasn't happy, and I threw the entire thing in the bin. So check this out. The 100K and 50K routes are exactly the same. It's just that you go around the loop twice for the 100K and once for the 50K. If you look at the elevation, you can see that is the case there as well. You can definitely see that there's 3 distinguished hills about 12K in. This guide also brought a couple more questions to mind for me. The 100K start, there's 2 waves. There's a 9 a.m. and a 9:05 a.m. Basically, it looks like if you're riding over 18 miles an hour, you'll be in wave 1. Under 18 miles an hour, you should do wave 2. But if we look at my ride from last year where I did 1 loop, I averaged 19.2 miles an hour. This is a little bit tricky because I would assume that if I stretch it another 30 miles, that average speed would probably come down a bit, but would it go below 18? I'm not totally sure, so I'm going to plan to go in wave 1. Only a couple days until the race start, and I want to give a kudos to the race organizers. Tries for Health is putting on this event. They took it over from somebody else. Now last year, there were some things that could have definitely been improved upon, and it looks like these guys are doing that. More porta potties, better communication with the athletes, and I really appreciate their attention to detail. If you look at one of their very first photos that they uploaded with their new logo, it looks like there's a front suspension on this bike. And somebody points that out, okay, but is that a front suspension? Now, it's not a big deal to have front suspension on your logo because some gravel bikes or mountain bikes that'll be at this race are going to have front suspension, but they went ahead, and by the time the athlete guide came out, they removed the front suspension from their logo. They've also posted this video of a bit of a washout on the course, and you can see this rider has no problem with it, but if you're in a group, in a race setting, this could definitely cause some problems. I just need to find out where it's at and then be at the front of the group so I can ride through it if I'm in a group. Alright, well, there's still a lot to do. I've got to build a new bike rack because my old one actually ate into my frame a little bit, which really breaks my heart. I also got to do a little bit more training just leading up to the race, make sure I'm in tip-top shape. So let's go. The 2022 Waterloo Grit Gravel is underway, and I am rolling out in a pretty good position in the chute. I'd gotten there pretty early, not really intentional, I was just there at the right time. I want to talk about some of my intentions for this race, though. The first 2 races of the year, I very well could have DNF'd from how hard I went at the start, and leg cramping and things that I've had so far. So this race, I want to be conservative, and I want to make sure that I can race a 60-mile distance and finish strong, or at least finish well enough to where there isn't a concern about not finishing at all. So we're rolling out. It's pretty fast, right? The power's up around 300 watts at points here, but we're not on gravel yet. We've got this nice paved road out of the park, and then we turn right onto this loose, sandy, dusty surface, and things get a little bit more wild here. It's fine, and then it's not. There's potholes. We're weaving, dodging, people are losing bottles, they're having to stop. And I'm putting out good power here, still getting past like I'm standing still. Now, I had lost some confidence right away. Another rider pulls over. I'd lost my confidence right away when I had hit some of those holes because I always talk about this. I have to see what's in front of me, and that is not a great thing to have to do when drafting is your best friend in these races, but until I get settled in here, I am trying to leave lots of room in front of me, but still put out decent power here. I figured the group would come back together once the initial chaos sort of settled down, but it really doesn't. Some of these guys are just gone. They're just fast and they're gone. I eventually settle in with a couple of riders here, one that will look familiar if you watch my last video on the Dirty 30. The gentleman in the high-vis vest there, we had ridden almost an entire day together during the race at the Dirty 30, so I knew I was in about the right position. However, I am really going to start riding wheels here and doing as little work as possible. The reason being is the wind was directly from the east, and we're headed east for about 12 more miles from this point. Now, 7 miles into the race, the hills start, so I don't want to get to those hills tired and unable to climb them and losing whatever group I'm in. Also, on the left-hand side here, you'll see this rider on the orange bike with the green and blue kit. This is Tim. We chatted before the race, and I had no idea how big of a role he was going to play in my race today, but he's here in this little group as well. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I did end up moving around a couple of riders to get behind this rider in this black kit. Now notice I'm doing 250, 260 watts, and he's having a drink. Now, the carrot to chase for us is that group right up the road. I'm not entirely sure how many riders are there, maybe 10, 15, but everyone around me sort of had this feeling that they wanted to get to that group sooner than later, which is completely understandable. But for me, at this moment, I'm already riding as hard as I really feel like I want to. In the name of being conservative for this race, I am only going to sit on wheels at least until the headwind section's done. The rider on the left there, he makes a move, and he's going to actually attempt to bridge all the way from where we're at to that group up the road. And he makes a valiant effort, a big push. And as he does so, we catch a couple of riders from the back of that group. This rider in the blue here, he falls in with us. We're going to catch another guy with a red kit on. He's going to fall into our group as well. And these are just riders who'd fallen off that group in front of us, and the gap isn't really growing that much. And this was one of the reasons I was saving myself. You see this hill here, we're doing 5 miles an hour at 400 watts. I couldn't put out this power if I had been riding too hard at the beginning of this race. And this is, again, the whole idea of being conservative, is so I can play a little bit when I do get to these more difficult sections of the course. You'll notice this rider here, he is coming back. He had just tried to make that bridge attempt, and I thought he made it. And maybe he did, and he's just getting dropped on this hill, but he's coming back to us. And this hill does seem to take a lifetime. I remember it feeling very, very long, and you're not even done by the time that you get a little flat section. As I come up next to him here, we discuss that there's a camera person right up the road here from Stella Fly. We'll skip forward to that. And we decided that we should try to look cool, but I didn't really know what that meant, so I just stood up and pedaled. And this is the shot that they got. Pretty cool. You can also see the group is a little bit splintered behind us, but that'll all come back together. Then we take a right turn, which is very confusing. It wasn't on my course that I'd uploaded to my Garmin, but it was something that I vaguely remember seeing on the internet somewhere, that there was going to be a reroute. Now the road was closed that we would have taken and that we took last year, but this year somebody has allowed us to go through this gravel pit, which is amazing. It's so cool. I mean, how appropriate is it for the Waterloo Grit Gravel? We got a big pile of gravel right to our left. It's wonderful. So I'm really sort of in awe of what we're looking at here, and just being able to ride through this gravel pit. And the conditions a little bit different. It's sort of loose on the stones and the sand. And then I'm smacked with this massive headwind as soon as we come around that hill, because it's wide open and we're still headed east. So I sprinted to catch up to this guy's wheel, and then he accelerates. So he must be feeling really good, because just for me to get to his wheel was 500 watts. Thought it was so sweet that we got to ride through this area. So cool. Loved it. Now, maybe we took the hill gingerly, but those riders that we just saw in the photo behind us had all caught up to us. So on the downhill, we must have been going a little bit slow. But as we exit the gravel pit, we find ourselves at another climb. Now this one has one good line. You basically have to be in this line, otherwise everything on the left and right is this really loose, a little bit bigger stone that you're not going to be able to get much traction with. And again, I settle in at my comfortable pace, about 300 watts. Now my heart rate looks really good. I'm not struggling on this hill, but there's really no reason for me to go crazy and blast up it. Again, I gotta keep in mind this whole time that we've got to do this whole course again, a second time. I slowly eke my way up to this rider's wheel because we're still headed east, mainly. We're doing a little bit of turning back and forth, but we're still headed in an easterly direction. So keeping on a wheel is going to keep me out of the wind. Now the group that was behind has sort of come around us. The guy in the black kit, the red kit, and then even the rider in the blue had gotten a little bit of a gap upon us. We're coming into the third climb of the route, and they come in quick succession. So you're not totally recovered by the time you get to it, but everyone's going pretty hard up at 400 watts at 4 miles an hour. Not moving too quick. We get through that without a whole lot of trouble, and the group's still together. Now, this rider in the black, again, was really riding quite hard. I didn't want to be in the wind at all, and we're still headed into the headwind, but I was starting to feel some pressure that we needed to get to that group in front of us, and I was sort of being a little bit lazy in the group. So I do want to show that I'm, part of the team as far as the group that we're in right now. So I put in this effort, a little bit of an uphill, so I had to spike up the power a little here. But I'm willing to do a pull, and I'm actually a little bit lucky that it happens on this pavement section because I can bring the power back down, mid 200s and sit there, and I'm still, still doing a pull. I'm just not, we're not going to win. We're not going to get to that group immediately, but we'll get there eventually if I just stay on this power. My heart rate's starting to come up a little bit. My legs are starting to feel it, and there was actually a conversation right here about getting up to that group, but it's really not in my control to do that. I'm almost tapped out on what I can do over a long period of time at that 200 watt mark. So now at the beginning of the race, the organizers explained that washout we saw earlier in this video was at about 18 miles, and they were pretty much dead on. You can see the group in front of us has stopped and gotten off their bikes. The guys in front of me are gonna ride it, so I'm gonna give it a shot as well. No problem. We got through that just like the guy in the video we saw there earlier. And now we have found ourselves in the group that we've been chasing for, 13 miles now they've been just in front of us? Now it's been a hard fight to get back onto this group. Everybody's been riding pretty hard. I've been wheel surfing, so I'm relatively fresh, but being in this group is really chaotic. It's mentally draining as well because there's a lot of dodging, bobbing, and weaving happening just to avoid potholes and such. And being at the back means that there's a lot of surging, and eventually that's going to take its toll on me. I cannot keep up with that. I was actually doing better in our smaller group just off the back. So inevitably, I'm going to fall off this group, unfortunately, and find myself sort of in no man's land until we've got Tim, who we mentioned earlier in the video, this rider with a KLM kit on, and myself. Now we skipped a bunch of time because I'd had some issues with my camera, but basically the KLM rider came by me, I got on his wheel, and then Tim caught both of us and then passed us because this is a crosswind section. There's a lot of trees and things, but you're really not getting a whole lot of benefit from drafting. You're pretty much putting out a watt for watt effort. So we're just sort of spread out here. I'll admit I'm a little bit down at this point because I'm not in a group and I can't work with anybody at this very moment, but I am feeling good enough to do a second loop. Now Tim's been on the front here for a couple of miles doing a fantastic job. The crazy thing about Tim is that he will just look the way he looks right now, and he could be doing 150 watts or 700 watts, and you can't tell. He's just cranking out power, very much so a diesel engine. And he's just gonna roll. Now he helps me a ton throughout this race when I can stay on his wheel. As you can see here, both the KLM rider and myself have kind of been dropped just by Tim's persistent hard effort. Now the KLM rider is strong, I know this, but he just sort of sits up right here. Now I had done that earlier once I fell off the group, but I thought we were all sort of working together. I want to get back to Tim's wheel as soon as I can, so I do want to carry the momentum, but I still need to take it a little bit easier. So I'm just rolling through here, 24 miles an hour, it's plenty of speed. And I do know that there are the hills that we just dealt with on the first loop. We've got to do them again, and that would probably be a good chance to catch up to a couple more riders. So here we are. We're entering the first of the 3 hills for the second time. Now I've been so mentally focused on my lines that I just sort of take a mental break, and for some reason I'm gonna ride right off the side of the road here. I have no clue why this happens, but I get back on the road and get back into the power. I remember looking up and thinking, what's happening? So anyways, my plan was, catch Tim and the KLM rider on this hill, but they're not really coming back to me. I'm only doing, at some point here, 2 miles an hour. Now I know I'm not doing the kind of power to be catching people, but I thought that they would, after the effort they just put out, they have to slow down a bit. That's not the case at all, unfortunately. We come back into the gravel section. I still haven't caught the KLM rider or Tim. In fact, the KLM rider has ridden off up. He's by that giant gravel hill down there already. He's put some distance between us. Tim's got some good distance on me, and I'm trying to get back to his wheel. I know how important it's going to be on his wheel before we turn around this huge hill, because that's when that wind will blast me and I will not be moving anywhere. But I do not get there in time, and I have to suffer through this headwind on my own. So we've gotten done with the gravel pit. We've already done the climb after the gravel pit, and I finally made it back to Tim's wheel. We had this super fun, flowy road section after the gravel pit, it's a lot of fun to ride, and it was a good opportunity for me to get back on the wheel. But again, Tim is too strong. I am desperately trying to hold on, and I think he's actually trying to help me here, because he looks back and realizes that I'm struggling. And it's good for us to work together, because we can see some riders just up in front of us. Now I assume that they're off of the group that I had fallen off of earlier, and if we could catch them, we could be a team of 4 instead of just a team of Tim and me trying to follow Tim. That could be much easier for us. I don't see the KLM rider there. He must have passed them as well, so he went from taking it easy and sitting up to just smashing it over these hills, which is very smart, really. He's gonna make up the most ground on these hills if that's what he is good at. We finally make our way over that last hill, and now things change, right? Because there's no more hills to hit. We're getting nearer to the finish of the race, and being in a group is more important than ever, because it's less likely that we will be splitting up over the smaller hills that come through the rest of the course. We're at mile 39, and we've caught the 2 riders that we saw just in front of us on the last climb. So we're a team of 4, and then as 4, we're going to catch 3 more riders to make a total squad of 7 riders. And this is great news. The people that are falling off that group that I'd fallen off of earlier are joining up with us, and we're just a little bit of a chase group here. You can get a look at the group here. One of the guys of the 2 we just caught had fallen off this group just before I turned the camera back on. So there's 6 of us. I'm on the very back, and you can see how significant the wind is. You can look at this guy's his vest he's got on. It is just going crazy. The dust is coming at us, and it's not like we're going crazy fast or anything. It's just how aggressive the wind is. I'm starting to get a sense that maybe he's going to fade, and that if I stay behind him, I'm going to get stuck. But at the same time, he's looking pretty good. But that group of 4 riders are going to get away from me if I don't make a decision here. Now we've turned left, so we're no longer into the headwind, so for me to make a move wouldn't be a bad decision. So I go around the protected side. Not that it matters a whole lot in this case, but I roll up and I see another rider who's falling off because his friend had just fallen off a little bit earlier. Now I'm chasing a group of 3. I eventually catch the group of 3. So we've got myself, Tim, the KLM rider in front of Tim, and then a guy in a red kit. And as we approach this water crossing, this washout again, I did it the first time, no problem, so the second time shouldn't be any issue either, and it is not. However, I would like to see that truck try to get through there. And we roll on as a group of 4. Now the rider in the red had flicked me through at some point in the near future here, and I got up next to him and I could not pull through. I was doing 260 watts and he was next to me looking at me like, aren't you going to go? All 3 of these guys are stronger than me, and it's pretty much all I can do to stay on their wheels. Look at these potholes too. Picking the line, or picking a good line, was really important all day, and there was no way to absolutely avoid all the holes. Sometimes you just had to eat one. So now this is sort of a sad moment for me because Tim and the KLM rider are riding away, and I certainly do not have what it takes to close this gap. Now the rider in the red kit is behind me, and he had explained he probably wouldn't be able to keep up with those guys. I told him I probably couldn't either. So he and I worked together a little bit on the final road section of this race, which again is a crosswind, so we're pretty much doing watt for watt. I'll try to sneak over to get some draft here on the right hand side, the protected side, but this is pretty much it right here. This is all that we have. And that's okay because we're not going to get caught, but we're also not going to catch anyone. We just got to get to the finish of this race, which we do. And he falls off a little bit before the end, but I see the finish line, and I've always got to put in an effort if I can. And here we go. We've done 60 miles out on this course today, and it has been a blast. We roll in, and I feel really good. I hadn't cramped up. I was able to finish the race with basically to the best of my ability, and we're done. Now it's just time to enjoy some of the festivities. I got some coffee, some barbecue from Smokehouse 52. We just had a good end of the day. It was a beautiful day for a bike race. Plus I set some new records for my power output. I put out 227 watts for an hour and 217 watts for 2 hours, which means I executed my plan almost perfectly of being more conservative and have a higher output over the entirety of the race versus over just the beginning. So that's that. The Waterloo Grit Gravel 2022 is done. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.